Hey guys, it's your boy Vertigo. After that kind of like pretty upbeat intro, I just gotta say that the topic of this video is just gonna be a little bit more heavy, I think, than my other videos have been. I feel like it's fair. The goal of this channel was like Smash Brothers content mixed with mental health content. My last video was kind of just Smash Brothers. It had kind of very little to do with mental health. So I figured I could do the reverse. I could do a video that's more just about mental health and is just like a little bit more real and a little bit more raw. And it's kind of heavy. As you guys have known, if you've been watching any of my videos, I'm a therapist. And I've had to do a lot of my own therapy. In fact, I've been in therapy consistently since I was 17 years old. And it's made me a much better functional human being. And I cannot be more grateful for the person who's kind of helped me become this version of myself. And with that said, I just kind of want to highlight for you guys, maybe spare you some years worth of therapy and actually just have an honest conversation about what I think are like some of the most important things that I learned. So I'm just going to use a normal talking voice. I'm not going to put on some fake YouTube excitement. We're just going to talk about, a few things that I think are particularly important. If any of them help you, I invite you to share that in the comments. I will also add that these are merely my opinions. You are pretty free to disagree. And I would honestly love to hear any disagreement. I'd love to hear your guys' points. I'd love to hear your perspectives. I don't know if there's necessarily one right answer to everything.
Could it really be that
simple? Maybe at some point in my own career, I'll be pretty convinced about what that is. But I'm not currently there. So with that said, here's the first one, and I feel like it's a pretty big one. Lesson number 1, functional people don't get abandoned. This is one that was particularly hard. I've never shared anything about this, but for the sake of anyone who's maybe ever gone through something similar, I kind of do want to talk about it. I was in a really long relationship. It's like 7.5 years. And it ended kind of abruptly after a little bit of turbulence. And it was extremely painful. And when you experience something that's emotionally devastating, the impulse is to be like this is awful, this is evil. This thing that happened to me, it's beyond words. I cannot possibly comprehend it. And you want explosive language to be able to describe the thing that you experienced because you went through hell. Of course, why would you want to use anything else? DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, has this idea where you have the emotional mind and you have the rational mind, and a responsible synthesis of the two is wise minds. And emotional mind, one of the follies of it is it sometimes overestimates threats. And so when I imagine what I experience, and probably what other people have experienced too, it's like this thing feels so awful at the time. It's crazy, it's mad, it's earth-shattering. It must be evil. It must be the worst thing in the entire world. Because if it's not, then why do I feel this way? And so using the term abandoned is very tempting for a lot of people when a relationship ends. And parents abandon their kids, someone who's dependent on someone else gets abandoned. If you are an independent adult, what we all should within reason strive to be, you don't get abandoned. Don't make yourself cold, don't make yourself a rock, but you have to make yourself someone who can't be abandoned, because functional human beings can't be abandoned. Number 2, you do not have the right for other people to see you the way you want to be seen. Again, this is probably the biggest thing that I struggled with when I started therapy when I was a senior in high school. I wanted to be this appealing person. I wanted to be someone who was funny. I wanted to be someone people liked. I wanted to be nice. I wanted a lot of friends. And I thought if people only saw, my heart inside, then all my problems would be solved. I'd have every friend in the world because I know me. And I think I'm okay. So once people get to know that part of me, surely I'm going to be just like inundated with a lot of friends, right? In college, I had a lot of friends and it was cool. But one of the things that was a difficult adjustment is accepting the fact that like people have every right to see me however they want to. You watching this video, you will probably have a particular impression of me. You're allowed to think that, okay? You're allowed to hate. You're allowed to leave whatever comments you're gonna make. And like, that doesn't mean I have to do anything about it. That doesn't mean I have to overcompensate. That doesn't mean I have to aim to please everybody. Oh, but seriously though, if you guys leave hate comments, I have family in the NSA, so tread carefully. You know, it sounds like a cliche, but like, when you know yourself, when you know who you are, when you know your tribe, so to speak, like, you're not gonna care about what some random person happens to think about you. Like, I used to be so activated. If I were like walking down the street and I kind of tripped and I knew people like saw me, that used to sting, because I'm like, oh my god, like, what if for the entire rest of these people's lives, like, this face is just associated with clumsiness or like failure or like something. Like, my mind would kind of go to those places, and it's ridiculous, and it's not worth the time. Like, I've found that allowing yourself to be stupid, allowing yourself to be perceived as stupid, can be one of the most liberating things of all time. Like, you learn that nothing's gonna happen to you. Like, sure, someone might think you're an idiot. Someone might think like, oh, that question you asked, you know, that was stupid. Like, just as a little bit of an example, it took me probably a little bit too long to realize that when people said that they were going window shopping, they weren't literally shopping for windows. I was probably 22. And confessing that to people, you know, even among like trusty friends, it can almost be the kind of thing that like still feels a little bit vulnerable, because it's like, oh my god, like, I must look like such an idiot, you know? And it's just the kind of thing that like, when you let it happen and you own up to it and you just tell yourself, hey, I'm going to be the kind of person who's like that. I'm just going to be the kind of person who has that impression on people. It is so liberating, and your attention is not so completely focused inside. You're more able to like engage with your environment. You're more able to engage with people, and it's just way better. The next two are probably going to be a little bit controversial, and so I just like accept and recognize that. This is kind of the philosophy that I use just like with people that I talk to. And I don't want to just sound like the kind of person who's going to be like, oh, everything happens for a reason. But the way that it was framed to me is this idea that like things could have only ever really happened one way. And like, if we take the idea of like the deterministic universe, right? Like, the universe is made up of increasingly little particles, and those particles all have rules. And we all feel like we make conscious decisions, and free will is its own thing, and we can have that entire debate. But like, the past is data, it's set in stone. When you made a decision that was questionable, you were just the kind of person in that moment who was going to make that decision. And you gotta accept that. You were the kind of person in that moment who just was going to make that decision. Now, you have another opportunity every day to be more functional or smart, and stick to your own values, you know, if that is not the kind of person that you want to be. And it really helps diminish feelings of regret if like you really believe it and you really internalize it. And so people might ask, like, well, if things could have only ever happened one way, like, what's the point of apologizing? Like, what's the point of expressing, you know, regret? Or like, I'm sorry, like, I can't believe I did that. That was against my own values. That was against the person I wanted to be. And I don't want to be that person. Well, you would still do it because you're still recognizing that you have a value system, that you try every day to be a particular kind of person. And you also need to repair within your own relationships. You need to acknowledge guilt. You need to acknowledge, you know, you did something wrong. And that's part of building trust. You know, in relationships, Gottman, you know, the guy who started this like Gottman philosophy of couples therapy, you know, he had this idea that like you build trust by putting coins in a bank over time, and that it wasn't like the big romantic gestures that really built trust. It was like the little things, like being able to listen to your partner when they're talking about things that are important to them, being able to like have natural moments of connection where you listen to each other, and expressing legitimate, you know, remorse for something that you did wrong. Like, that's part of putting those coins back in that bank. That's part of, you know, rebuilding trust, and that's part of building confidence that you can be that kind of person who's able to like make those decisions down the road. The last one is probably the most controversial. And I will say that literally like the day after my long relationship ended, my own therapist kind of busted this out. It was really ballsy of him. But I don't disagree with the fact that he said it. So basically he made the argument that all relationships are optional and anyone at any time can just kind of leave, and they're allowed to do that. Anyone can leave any relationship at any time. Now this was extremely hard for me to hear. I really wanted to value commitments. I wanted to value things being sacred. I wanted to value, a consistent pursuit of just being together, whatever the heck that looked like. That's what I wanted at the time. That's what I thought was important. And this idea that you can kind of just throw everything away, no questions asked. Naturally, if you're going through something like that, like, that's terrifying. That's terrifying because you don't want to be abandoned again. You don't want to be left again. And if you're used to thinking this idea that like anyone can just kind of leave at any time, you're naturally going to start worrying like, well, why stay? Like at the slightest inconvenience, they're going to leave. At the slightest sign of tension, they're going to leave. It's easy to just fall into that mindset. Where I would counter those ideas would basically just be like, if you're with the right kind of person, if you're with the person who just likes doing things for you, who accepts you for who you are, who is willing to commit and have the emotional maturity to make things last a long time, then it's not really going to matter that it's optional because they're just going to be the kind of person who chooses that anyways. And those people are out there. People who just wake up and choose you are out there, like regardless of who you are. Someone out there is waking up today who maybe you don't know yet, and someday will choose you, and is someday like waiting for you. It's a really sweet sentiment when I try to put it that way. It took a second for me to just like learn how to process all this. It took a second for me to not be angry at the thought of just nothing is sacred, everything is optional, like relationship anarchy, do whatever you want, like do whatever feels good. That's not what my therapist was saying. That's what I heard. And it's taken a long time for me to kind of be able to internalize this with some seriousness. It really isn't a whole lot more sophisticated than that. There are people who are just going to choose you, who are going to love you and support you, and not merely tolerate those things about you that you think aren't super great. Like, they just know that that's just part of the package. Your basement, the things that you're not particularly proud of, that's part of the package. And what you don't want is to be in a relationship with someone who's just waiting for you to change. You don't want that. To conclude, I'll just tell you a quick story. My own therapist told me the story of people that he worked with a really long time ago. And it was this couple, and I think the guy was maybe like 29. The girl was maybe 24, 23. He really wanted to start a family. She was like into journalism and like really wanted to build a career. And they had a few sessions and made no progress and just kind of left. He never saw them again. And so 6 years later, they come back. And same thing, he's like 35 and he wants to start a family, and she's like 30 and still wants to pursue her career. And so he asks him, hey, this is the same conversation we had 6 years ago. Like, why are you still here? Why are you still in this relationship? And he says, I just was hoping she would change her mind. And that's the thing, right? Like, when we really value something, when we care about something, when we're really vulnerable about something, and it's just so important to us, then if we really love someone, we're naturally going to think, oh, it's only a matter of time until they get it too. It's only a matter of time until they realize how cool or important or awesome this is, because it's so exciting to me. It's so awesome to me. And eventually they'll get it because they love me. Like, that's how it is. I think that's probably one of the biggest takeaways I could possibly offer, just on the topic of therapy. Don't just wait for people to change. Resentment builds up, and that can be a train that's really hard to stop. Well, guys, that concludes the video. Definitely a pretty big change of pace from what you're used to from me. The funnies are going to come back. I'm going to have part 2 of the Smash Star KO tier list coming up next. I've got a bit of an international vacation coming up, which I will tell you about, and I want to just have this stuff out there before that. Thanks again. If you've watched the video up until this point, I really appreciate it, and I hope some part of it resonated with you. I hope maybe you learned something, or maybe there was something that you just flat out disagreed with and you want to hash it out in the comments. With that said, thanks guys, I appreciate you, and this has been another Vertigo video. Peace.